Everybody, welcome to another show, the Customer Success Show, episode number 28. We're talking everybody's favorite topic today, digital customer success, everybody's favorite topic. Everybody agrees. So we have another awesome panel here. But before we get to the panel, just a little Success Panda housekeeping. So one big thing is coming out soon, which people will have DM'd me about, and there's a waiting list. But I just wanted to bring it on stage real quick. It is our, this is going to be our marketplace, which is coming out. So say, for example, you have something you want to give away for free, like you have an awesome onboarding, template, or if you want to create a service or a subscription, you're going to be able to do that right here, and people will be able to come on here and buy it for whatever it is that you want. So if you got something cool that you're looking to sell or give away to the community, you will soon be able to do that. Let me see, get back to everybody here. There we go. You'll soon be able to do that on Success Panda. Cool. So head over to successpanda.io, set up your account. So when it drops at the end of the month, you will be able to list your stuff on there. So there's that. And now let's do intros to the panel. So Melanie, Michaela, and Justin, welcome to the show. And let's do a quick 60-second to 2-minute intro of who you are, maybe where you work, what you do, and then also make sure you include something that you like to do for fun. So why don't we start, ladies first. We'll do, on my screen shows Melanie, Michaela, then Justin.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited to say that I've recently joined Language.io as their Vice President of Customer Success. Cool. But my experience in SaaS began 22 years ago when I joined a company called Right Now Technologies in 2003. And yes, this was before SaaS was used as the acronym to describe the industry. I've had the pleasure of leading customer success teams since Right Now introduced that net new role into their ecosystem in 2010. And I spent 5 years at Oracle after their acquisition of Right Now. Then I transitioned out to a smaller SaaS company, which I have a tendency to do, and worked for a company called Workfront starting in 2019. And then from 2019 through 21, I started leading the customer success org there. Adobe bought Workfront, so I joined Adobe for 4 years. In that 7-year time span or 6-year time span was when I had responsibility for a scale team and navigating exponential growth in the install that happened post Adobe acquisition is a lot of what I can talk about today from really driving a digital success customer strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Melanie. Go ahead, Michaela.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me today. My name is Michaela. I'm based in Bratislava, Slovakia, so tuning in from other continent. I work as a customer success operations manager at a software company called Allplan, and I'm also a founder of Retain and Gain, which is a business podcast and consulting. I pretty much always been in a customer facing role, so that's how my career started. And then I got into the proper customer success a couple of years ago when I was hired to build a customer success strategy for one of the leading cybersecurity organizations. So that's quickly for my professional life. And in my private life, I really enjoy long walks with my dog and hockey practices with my son. I really enjoy the cold ice rinks as a former figure skater. So there is that.
Nice. That will be one thing never in my bio, figure skater. I can for sure you that. Awesome. Thanks, Michaela. Go ahead, Justin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Neal. I'm based in the Raleigh-NC area, capital of college basketball for anyone watching. So I've been in CS and digital CS/CS ops for about 10 years now. I've done stints at SolarWinds, IBM, UKG, and VMware, where I helped lead operations and digital emotions for those companies. So starting from scratch and kind of building those out. So excited to share some of that experience. I've been doing some consulting, speaking publicly, speaking on podcasts, and a couple of upcoming summits. So you might see me in the wild on a couple of things coming up here. But I am excited to share my experience here. When I'm not digging into digital CS and CS ops, I'm chasing around my 5 and 3-year-old boys and trying to catch hockey and basketball games as much as possible.
Nice. Got some hockey fans here, which is cool. I've only been to like a couple hockey games because I live in Ohio, and apparently Miami of Ohio has a pretty good hockey team, and it's fun to go to. It's just no NHL team where I live, so but it's fun. Every time I've gone, I've enjoyed it, so that's cool. Alrighty, so let's kind of get kicked off here with talking digital customer success. So as far as like, the format, we'll let everybody respond 60 seconds to 2 minutes, and then we can just open it up back and forth until we just banter on, and then we can move on to the next question. But so this is by far, I think, one of the most requested topics and one of the most prescient topics because, digital, and we are going to sneak in an AI question here because, why not? But digital customer success, I think, is on every organization's roadmap at every scale, at every level. Doesn't matter if you're the founding CS member of a startup or you're working for an enormous company that has a very mature organization. So first question would just be like, would you define digital customer success as something that's different from normal customer success? Or when someone comes up to you and says, hey, I want to start a digital customer success program, what do you typically say in response? So how about we start with Justin? We'll work the other way around and then we'll open it up. So Justin, Michaela, then Melanie.
Yeah, I think my gut reaction is yes, it is different. And again, through building kind of these programs at large companies that have hundreds of CSMs and a lot of big names and a lot of accounts that are demanding a lot of attention, right? So you can't necessarily build for that use case first. You have to start small and think about what are the buckets of customers that aren't covered or aren't getting necessarily the support or need that they need to, and how do you build a motion that supports that type of interaction. And it's about automation, it's about data, and it's about building something to start with. And again, at IBM and VMware, we didn't have a day one program, or we didn't necessarily have a plan to build out a whole bunch of emails and blast digital campaigns from the first day, right? So it took a lot of time to methodically build out both an ops motion and this digital CS motion to support that, right? Because you kind of needed both the tools and functionality to be able to support what would a digital program look like, making sure you have the right health scores in place or contacts in place or things that you may need in order to get started. You don't necessarily have to have the whole picture figured out, but at least get started with that. I think was key, and to be able to kind of build and test and strategize and kind of iterate. So it's about building, starting, and then making changes as you go and as you learn.
Cool. Go ahead, Michaela.
So I think when we say customer success, people traditionally think about that high touch customer success approach. So that white glove approach towards high revenue customers or key accounts. But then what happens with those other segments? And that's when the digital customer success comes in. For me, it means making sure that no matter what segment we have the customers in, they still get an appropriate resources and appropriate treatment that will lead to a good experience. And when we think about digital customer success, I think a really important thing is to identify touch points or triggers that happen on that customer journey, that happen during that customer life cycle, and then schedule and automate appropriate action that will address those triggers or touch points.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Melanie.
I would completely agree with everything that's been stated. I love that digital customer success is a top topic, and I think that we're seeing that overall as a major industry trend, and there's some metrics that back that up. I think digital customer success is not an if strategy. I think it's a win, and when you need to address it is really early on, and in consideration of your entire customer base, not just underserved or unserved segments. So I think it's great to incorporate it in day one strategy, and apply to all customer segments. From a definition perspective, I would consider it a strategic priority for customer or CS organizations of all shapes and sizes. I think it needs to be multi-tactic. I think it needs to be focused on being proactive in its engagement and completely aligned with driving customer outcomes. And I love the topics that Justin and Michaela brought up: data-driven, absolutely, like customer-focused strategy, multi-tactic, boosted by AI and other tools, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I love Justin's topic on iterative, absolutely, an iterative approach to this overall strategy that changes with your business and your customer's business.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of good points brought up in that first round. I wrote down two that I just wanted to highlight here. So, I mean, I think for me, I try to keep my definitions kind of like simple, and what I would tell people if they said, hey, what's the digital customer success? It's like the right message to the right person in the right channel. And so kind of got to get that tic-tac-toe action, right, of it for it to be effective. Because you can have 2 out of 3. You can have the right message to the right person in the wrong channel, or you can get the wrong person, the right message in the right channel, right? So there's like all those iterations of that. But I think that's that iteration process, right, of what Justin is saying is like, okay, we have all these different stakeholders. Our C-suite people aren't responsive to in-app, right? What are they responsive to? Well, turns out it probably might be phone calls, but if you can get a digital customer journey doing phone calls, I mean, come on the show in 3 months, because we want to hear more about that. So when Justin, you're talking about ops. So just a quick follow-up question: do you think that? So just tell us more about that thought. What did you mean about CS ops? What does COps like do in tandem to the digital customer success team, and what's kind of their specific role?
So when I think about this, and I think about kind of my experience where I was hired as an ops person and I was kind of tasked to start building things in Gainsight, right? Building reports, building CTAs, building layouts, like all the kind of technical things that you need to do to stand that platform up. And then I was kind of asked, like, as part of that, we need to start setting up email campaigns. And this was before digital CS was truly a defined process, but it was about, hey, we know that there's this functionality that exists in this tool.
Right.
We want to start using it. And for us to be able to use it, we also need these other pieces to be in place so that we can use it in the right way, or the way that it's intended to, right? So something like a Gainsight that has this ability to send out automated email campaigns, to set that up, but it takes the work of either an admin or someone that just knows that tool well, or a combination of things to be able to kind of tell the system what it needs to do, right? And to be able to utilize the features in that platform to then build those digital emotions, whether it's, and like I was saying with iterative approaches, maybe we started small. We started with just a couple of steps of a, welcome email play, or how do you notify a customer when their usage drops or something like that. And then you get more complex and start adding things like in-app messaging, or, some other tools that you can kind of build a much larger, more comprehensive program. But I think ops is really behind all that, and ops and digital kind of have to work in the same line, or together, to ensure digital's getting what they need to be able to send those plays and get that analytics, or get those dashboards, or get what they need. But ops has to be aware of that, and also kind of keep that in mind when they're building, so that they're building for both kind of that use case and maybe the other ones that they're being asked to do.
Okay. Yeah. So that, I like that. I think a a lot of times, basically, people that know me and worked with me before know I have this framework called assets, process, people, policy. Assets are the tools we use. So it's like when you're doing digital customer success, you're using generally more tools than just like the standard email, and maybe phone, right? So you have that gain site, right? You've been using Journey Orchestrator or whatever to do that. So you kind of look for that different skill set or people that have used that before perhaps, or other software. Another thing that Michaela, you mentioned, talk about segmentation. I want to ask all three of you about this real quick, because this is a good question to ask. How do we segment our digital customer success? Like, what have you done in the past? What do you think kind of makes sense? But how do companies that you've experienced like segment who gets on the digital journey, who isn't, or maybe everyone is, all kind of any way you want to take that question. So we'll go Michaela, Melanie, then Justin.
Sure. So I think when we segment customers for the digital journey, it doesn't have to necessarily be the same segmentation that we use just to segment customers in the company, right? Because that's traditionally done by either their annual contract value or by their NRR or ARR, or just in general by the contract value they bring in. But I think for the digital journey, it depends a lot on a product. A lot of times when we talk about customer success or digital customer success, everyone automatically thinks all software companies, SaaS companies, but it's not always true. There are companies that are on-prem, or there are companies that are not even software companies that can have digital customer success. But the first step to truly having functioning customer success in digital form is that segmentation. So a lot of times we'll not have to only look at the spend of the customer, but also, for example, the product that they have, which product tier they have, because if they have one license, if we are talking about the software, right, their digital experience might be quite different from the company that has 1,000 licenses, because the training would look different, the renewal would look different, the surveying would look different, because you want to survey a decision maker and user differently, right? So there are a lot of components that come into play. That's why I think the first step for any company looking to build or reevaluate their digital customer success is really look at their segmentation model and find out if that segmentation model is working for the digital strategy.
I like that. Go ahead, Melanie.
So I think that our very traditional approach to segmentation really has started with annual recurring revenue. And I think that that's a great place to start, if only so that you can see your distribution of customers. Right. I think that what you can do then is layer on top of that both customer opportunity for growth and maturity, and also a knowledge of what customers of all sizes need in order to be successful in adopting your technology, right? And then meet them where they are. So, build the segment, build the approach to serve the segment, and then build the roles to execute the approach by segment. What I would say is that for digital customer success, I think that needs to absolutely be the underpinning for all segments of customers. And so I think it's a misnomer. And when I inherited my first scale team, it was the strategy for that team was to serve the long tail of business. And we kind of flipped that strategy on its head and said, well, I don't see our larger customers, not wanting this great thought leadership that we're publishing, right? They want that information too. So I think it's a misnomer that large customers cannot benefit from the content that we're curating through these other digital channels. And so I see it as a way to serve all customers and also to bolster the efficiency of your named CSMs. So let's say, for example, that we're publishing great first steps content on adopting a new feature or a new capability. And so, all of our customers have the benefit of understanding how to adopt that feature foundationally. And so those larger customers that do tend to like move into kind of transformational motions at one to mature, the named CSM's next conversation is the 201 level, not the basic level of understanding for that feature, but how are you going to continue to mature and adopt the use of that feature? So it really bolsters the overall effectiveness of all touch points that you have with customers across all segments.
I like that. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah. So again, thinking about this from kind of these larger companies that I worked with that were starting to scale up, starting to scale digital. And it was like starting small, starting with what you had, starting with the data that was there, starting as kind of a test ground of, hey, we just need to get something out. We have this uncovered ARR, right? And we're kind of segmenting it by that. So we had this bucket of customers that, that were didn't have a CSM assigned, and they were essentially being built out as teams. So you had digital SMB tech touch teams that were then going to leverage these interactions, these digital engagements to manage that book of customers, right? So it started with that. It started with, okay, if we start sending this out and testing out kind of these messaging strategies, then what does that look like? How much engagement are we getting? Are we getting opens? Are we getting clicks? Are we getting more interaction? And is it effective? And ultimately, does it lead to more adoption, expansion, and of course, renewal, right? Which is the ultimate goal. So by taking that kind of test case and taking that strategy and taking that idea, you're reviewing that, you're kind of scaling it over time, you're learning what the data is telling you, and then you're thinking about how does this apply to the larger segments, right? To named accounts, to customers with CSMs, right? So you take kind of the pieces of that are working and think about how that can apply to that sort of account, right? So to the larger accounts. So through the process of trial, error, learning, failing, and getting the idea of here's what's working, here's what's not, here's what seems to be effective, here's what the customers seem to like, here's a messaging that seems to be sticking. You make changes, you iterate, and you kind of build up. Like it's almost like you scale up, right? You start with the test hypothesis accounts on the larger end that are, long tail SMB, and then you adjust, you make changes, you kind of narrow it down from there to figure out more targeted campaigns that are segmented towards specific customers, whether it's a segment, whether it's an industry, whether it's a specific product type, or again, in some of these large companies, you have so many complex relationships with different products and different people and different partners and all that stuff. It's hard to get a true sense of what exactly works, but you just try to build a more narrow focus as you scale up and as you grow.
I like one of the last points that you added that I want to ask, and then we can maybe just do a quick see what everyone thinks about this. When you talked about complexity, right? So there are any number, especially in the enterprise, who knows how many stakeholders actually sometimes in some of these deals, right? We're talking like above 10, right? And between 10 and 20, if not more, I mean, it just depends, right? So in your experience, when you're talking about complexity, like I feel like that's a real challenge, is perhaps when it's simple, when we got Justin, who is the decision maker, and Michaela, who's the user, on my point solution that I sold to you for $20K a year, and I put you on the happy track, right? But in the enterprise, like how do we think about dealing with complexity if we have there's 15 people that are somehow engaging with this account and not all of them need to know, like, is that something you have experience with, or what's everyone's thoughts on that? And Justin, you can follow up first.
Yeah. So it's a lot more involved, right? And it's a lot more methodical in the way you try to build this type of engagement, right? Because it's not just, like you said, we have one champion and one user and one buyer, and we're sending everything to those 2 or 3 people, right? And you're talking about, again, like a VMware or IBM, you have dozens, if not more, of contacts that are listed at the company, right? And that's great. We have those contacts. So it's great. We have a couple of people identified, but how do we go and from there and narrow it down to the right people to target and to the people that are going to find this messaging relevant? And sometimes we've learned through this experience that maybe you'll think the right person is who you want to target is, contact A or your champion, but you're not getting engagement from them. So then how do you react to that, and how do you change that? Like I kind of said earlier, is you iterate, and by taking the data you get and taking kind of what you can capture and making changes to that. So maybe you thought, okay, this is the guy who bought, this was our champion. We identified this person in the sales process. They're now the person we're kind of targeting. But then they're not engaging with the emails, or they're not, responding, or their usage drops, or you're seeing some red flags that are occurring. But again, because this is a large account with a dozen contacts, you can't necessarily assume all that is good or bad based on just one contact. So this is where ops comes into play and is super, super important in setting up a motion like this, because you're not trying to just get one set of data, or one point of data, right? It's not just one contact's interaction or engagement level. It's, well, we sent this contact this one, but we also had sent 3 or 4 other touch motions to 3 or 4 other contacts. Some of it CS related, maybe some of it engagement adoption related, maybe community related. So you're trying to build kind of this overall larger strategy with more than just super targeted, account based touch
Right.
points.
Right.
And you're trying to kind of build a larger picture of what is this account truly doing? How are they doing it? Why are they doing it? And who's doing it? Right. So again, that's where ops and a larger strategy and a larger conversation with your CS teams comes into play, because you want to have the best understanding of that customer possible, so you can
Right.
build as much automation and as much digital led motion as you can. But again, sometimes it may just not make sense, or you may just have to make changes.
Gotcha. Michaela, what do you think? Any follow-on thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely very peculiar. It all comes down to that handover from sales, because the sales is the ones who should identify which person is an admin or decision maker, who is going to be the user. And that's crucial information for you to identifying who is supposed to get the content, right? That's when we talk about larger accounts or larger enterprises. Then we also have businesses that work with just a single person that is going to be a decision maker and user in the same persona. And that's a completely different type of content that you have to create, right? And one thing that I think we forgot to mention also is the regional specification, because in global organizations, you have that baseline strategy, but then you have to really think about the regional touch to that strategy, because what is culturally appropriate in one region might not be appropriate in other region, or not even appropriate, but it just doesn't work for those people. While one country might be okay with getting emails every month, or having a touch point, and getting these promo emails, discount codes, etc., upsell offers, in another culture it might be completely inappropriate, and that might destroy your digital motion, because the person will just click unsubscribe and you're done.
Yeah. So it probably wouldn't be a best practice if I was saying, hey, bro, just wanted to, calling everybody bro. Got it. All right. I'll note that to myself and adjust my own digital. Awesome. I like that you brought in the cultural component. I think that isn't talked about enough. All right, Melanie, any follow-on thoughts?
Yeah, I just hope that one of the things that folks take away from this discussion is that digital customer success does not need to be complex or daunting, and you can start small. This is not rocket science. And again, I've worked for large organizations. Oracle and Adobe, both are top 5 software companies in the world, and deploying this approach worked. And this approach is, what is the strategy for any tactic that you are approaching through a digital success channel? When you're defining that strategy, who is the persona that you seek to reach, and how do you want to engage them, and what are you going to ask them to do or enable them to do? So start with the strategy, start with that target persona. You don't even have to cover all stakeholders at an account. Just target one persona. And this is very much dependent upon the SaaS solution that you're supporting and what makes or breaks good adoption. So in a prior company, I know that great adoption was driven by very strong admins. So guess what our strategy targeted every time? Mm-hmm. Improving the information and actionable items that you put in front of an admin to strengthen their ability to be effective in their role. So it just, you have to like just connect the small dots, right? And execute that strategy. You don't even have to have a lot of like complex data to do that, right? You just need to know your customers and know what outcomes you're trying to drive with them, and then take a multi-tactic approach to implementing it.
Nice. Yeah. So to circle, I know this was a follow-up question about complexity, but when we're circling back to how do we segment and portfolio and things like that, we talked about ARR and maturity. Anybody who's listened to this podcast or, seen any of my content knows that I'm a huge like jobs to be done, person. And I know that I've segmented, especially in the digital, like what are the jobs to be done from each customer, for example, like what you just said, Melanie, where an admin has a different job to be done. What does success look like for an admin in your digital journey compared to a decision maker, right? Versus like one of your power users. And that's my preferred way. And it's interesting because we can get into a lot of other questions like, do organizations charge for customer success? Do they charge for a customer success manager? Do they charge for a digital customer success journey, right? There's the monetization part. But I think for me, just trying to understand, similar to what Melanie, what you said before about like, who are the common champions and what are their common goals in trying to, achieve the ROI? Because the whole thing with like digital customer success is it's supposed to help you prove the ROI of what actually it is that you sold to them, right? And the stronger, if you're in a digital, customer success spot, then the stronger you can make that ROI case, then the more you'll be given. Cool. So let's do a quick fire round here of like 30-second answer, just because I don't know if it's going to be a whole thing, but is there a difference between scaled and digital? And if so, what do you think it is? Because I know this got brought up before. I think it might have been Justin that brought it up. So anybody have thoughts that they want to share first? I won't call on anybody because I'll just leave it up to you to volunteer.
I think that scaled was maybe the early term that we used to reference getting to more people in this multi-tactic approach. And I think over time, as we've matured it in this motion, that it's kind of morphed into a broader digital customer success motion, which by the way, relative to all customer success changes we're seeing in the industry, I think digital customer success is the most like interesting and just such a great opportunity to take the lead in content creation, customer engagement, value creation through innovation and creativity. So I think digital encompasses scale motion.
Cool. Any thoughts, Justin or Michaela? If not, it's fine. You don't have to. We're not trying to force it out of you. It's we want volunteers, not hostages. So
Yeah,
to quote a Pittsburgh Steelers coach. Go ahead, Michaela.
I was just going to agree with Melanie that for me, that scaled customer success can be a part of digital, because how I see it is that the digital is the way we deliver that content, while scale is how much content and what level we deliver.
Okay, cool. Like that.
This is a funny thing to bring up because this is just something that's come up a lot in the last, very recently, in the very last few days. And I kind of thought of it as one way, and then now it's kind of being presented a little bit of a different way to me. I kind of thought of digital as like the underpinning strategy, right? You're going digital first.
Yeah.
And then scaled is the way you move that through different sizes or different types of plays for different audiences, right? So digital may be the motion, but scaled may be the high touch motion of digital, right? So Again, different companies are starting to define it a little differently. I've seen very different nuances between digital versus scaled. The digital is a SMB tech touch only, and scaled is a high touch motion or a high touch digital led motion, or where scaled is all of digital and all SMB. So I don't know if I have a solid 100% sure answer, other than they're both very relevant terms and seem to be changing in this world.
Yeah. So if you're thinking, you're like, Brad, well, why does that matter? It's just like, why'd you ask me that question? That's so lame. It is a lame question, I admit. But I think one of the challenges that we have in customer success is that like we hear these terms. I get asked by people so I do like career coaching, I do mentoring and all this stuff. So I work with a lot of people who are wanting to transition in and who might be new, and they're looking at a JD. One says digital, one says scaled, and like, hey, what's the difference? To me, I think that let me go back to lack of definitions. So customer success kind of has the challenge of, if you look at all the different tech jobs that exist in the go-to-market motion, CS has the biggest challenge with definitions, because you know what, Justin, you know what sales does? It's kind of like it's in the word, right? They do sales, right? It's like, Melanie, what does product do? Oh, they do product, right? But when you ask people, what does customer success do? You get happy customers, renewals, support team. Like, you just get this whole Band-Aid of box of definition. So I try to bring clarity to some of these definitions. And I think for me, the big difference between scaled and digital is going back to that app framework I talked about: assets, process, people, policy. So the assets or the tools that we use are different. So digital is like self-explanatory. It's digitally done, meaning like you have a tool, you have a gain site or a churn zero, right? Or you have some sort of tool that you're traditionally doing it through. But scaled is more like just a one-to-many approach. So for example, I'm doing a one-to-many approach where I have a pool or pod model where I'm doing, one-to-many onboardings. Like, instead of just doing one-to-one white glove, I'm now doing a once-a-month onboarding for all my mid-market clients. So to me, I think that's kind of the difference, and that when it's talking about digital, it's incorporating all the channels that are digital, and that the scaled can just be, you can have a scaled CS motion for like a CSM. So another like quick question, and this is like, can just be a simple yes or no. It doesn't have to be super long, but have any of you, and I have had this question before from founders and other people who are trying to spin up, have you ever worked anywhere that will say like charges or tries to monetize their digital program, to where it's like, hey, Michaela, yeah, you want to sign up, you can get the standard service package, a self-serve model, that's X. You can get the digital, which is Y, and then the white glove, which is Z. Have any of you worked in places like that where they tried to monetize digital?
No. And I don't think that we should really monetize customer experience. I think it's okay during onboarding, right? Because some onboarding needs are simple. Somebody might need more help. It's the same as charging for deployment. I think it's okay to charge for onboarding, but I don't know if I would be okay with being charged or charging somebody for, I don't know, my availability for a phone call, or like, if you want your customer to be successful, because them being successful means that you keep getting recurring revenue. So it's in your best interest that they are successful.
There you go. Michaela's a square no. We like that. We like when people take a stand.
I'm also firmly in the no column.
Yeah.
There.
I've seen where CS is a service and is a paid for service, like getting a CSM or a dedicated CS resource, whether that's one person or a team, is sold as part of that package. I've never seen a specific digital CS as a service package. Right. This is what I would say.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just interesting because, like I said, I've had conversations with people who are founders that they're looking for like consulting work done, and they're trying to be like, you know how when you go on a lot of websites, they have those 3-tiered packages of typically what is the SaaS offering. You got a bronze, silver, gold. Well, they're kind of trying to extrapolate that to like the service offerings where it's just like, okay, well, we got the self-service, we got the, we got a digital or community that you can have access to, or then you have like a dedicated CSM. Because I think more companies are starting to charge for like dedicated CSMs, especially if you don't meet their specific deal requirements. You got to be spending like, over $1 million ARR, whatever it is, So I just thought it was an interesting question because I think people are just at least looking at that. So cool. Well, let's talk about. So this is my theory, and I want you to kind of shoot it down. Okay. So my theory is a lot of times is that a lot of businesses, they obviously want their customers to be happy and to be successful. But when we talk about like iterating on the customer journey or iterating on the digital journey, I'm of the opinion where I've kind of seen enough and know enough right now where I feel like most of the time the goal is to create what I call an MVS, which is a minimal viable service. And what I mean by that is like, what's the minimum amount of, we'll say, digital customer touch that we can offer, right, in order to get them to renew, right? Which is probably a lot of businesses, they look at it as like, sometimes they use the word as like just being efficient, right? So the question is this is kind of my thought where most companies are trying to go for this very efficient digital touch, but that presents potential complications when we're trying to work cross-functionally, because how many times does the organization actually touch the customer, and who's that coming from? So for example, we've had someone on the show before who made a joke about they used to work at a company where, because the company was very siloed, the person or the company that signed up, they would receive 5 onboarding emails. Like one was coming from CS, one was coming from sales, one was coming from product, one was coming from marketing, and one was coming from their CSM. And not a great look, that's not going to be everyone's great look. So how do we work cross-functionally to deliver an efficient digital experience when we're not the only ones who are touching the customer? So Melanie's shaking her head, so we'll go back that way again. So we'll start Melanie, Michaela, then Justin.
One of the reasons I love the emphasis on digital CS for customer success is the opportunity to work more collaboratively with ecosystem partners, specifically marketing, more so than we have traditionally, I think. Because if you think about, and when I was at Adobe, one of the best partnerships that we had was with our adoption marketing team, right? And so Adobe is very matrixed, and there's a lot of different organizations at Adobe that are just focused on different types of marketing, right? And so there is a marketing team focused on adoption marketing. And so that partnership is critical because you have to really think about, okay, our adoption marketing team did a lot of research. And when they conducted research with customers, and they conducted research with CSMs. They asked the same questions, right? What are the big blockers for adoption? Their content, which was fantastic, by the way, not a criticism, is very high level.
Right.
And they would always do a webinar with 2,000 attendees on high level value proposition for integration and automation in your solution, right? And then we would follow up very quickly, like, maybe two series following the broader adoption marketing to do more detailed deep dive into those topics, right? So that synergy between marketing and CS was just phenomenal. And there was a lot of folks that joined every one of those sessions that not only got the broader value prop, but that more detailed, how can I take this information and take the next steps in activating this capability? And so it was a great relationship. And we also had similar relationships with sales and with product. Like product loved to partner with us to get in front of customers to have conversations around new features, or just planned changes to our approach. And then sales would leverage a lot of the content that we created from a digital perspective in their ongoing cadences with customers, right? So it's just this really great way to collaborate cross-organizationally. If you're transparent and you're publishing all of the information and you're intentional with your approach.
Yeah, cool. What do you think, Michaela?
So, Brad, when you mentioned that example of customer getting 5 emails from 5 different departments, that's one of the fears that I hear a lot from people from various departments. You guys are doing all of these things. How do we make sure that customer is not overwhelmed? Well, I think there are 2 main elements that come into play with all of this, and that's the executive management that really needs to make sure that there is transparency and that everyone in the company is informed that there is some change going on, that there is some customer success motion being built, that there is a digital strategy being put in motion, because that is what fuels that positive change management. I think that's extremely crucial to the success. And then the second element is the CS ops. So in my role as the operations manager, I have a regular, and the whole team, we have regular check-ins with marketing and with regional sales, just to make sure we are aligned, that we know what one party is doing and what other party is doing, that it doesn't happen that, yes, customer gets 10 touch points within a week. And there are various tools, but we use monday.com, where we have a dashboard and all of the emails are listed there. You have the days, you have the type of the email, you have the audience, and that way you just make sure that you are aligned and the customer is not overwhelmed with the digital communication from various departments.
I agree. Don't overwhelm, especially like you said, bring in that regional factor. If you're in, Slovakia, or you're in Europe, Germany, then you get a welcome email in like English. If that's not your first language, you're like, this is not too helpful.
Not at all. And in Europe, the GDPR, is a huge topic. Like, you have to make sure that you get double opt-in from the customers, because you can't advertise the same way you can, for example, advertise in the US. So there are various obstacles or roadblocks that you have to think of when it comes to different digital CS regionally.
I agree. What do you think, Justin?
So Melanie's example of marketing and a very marketing heavy focus, collaborating in CS is interesting, because that sounds really nice and great. And I love that idea. The companies I worked at, very tech, very engineering driven, very product driven, right? So the idea of CS kind of taking on, and digital CS kind of taking on those tools and being able to play and use those was a little bit uneasy, just because those technical teams were very much involved in that, and they wanted to kind of have their hands in what we were trying to do. So it was maybe some marketing, but maybe more in engineering and product, and other teams that were very sensitive on kind of what you're sending, when you're sending it, how you're sending it. And then all that data that we're trying to collect is also kind of sitting in a centralized location, where not only we want to use it, but other teams, marketing, sales, others would maybe want to use that too. So for us, and for those kind of motions and those efforts, it was about A, being just transparent, and B, ensuring that we're kind of being collaborative in that way, and ensuring that what we're doing is clear to other teams and parties and stakeholders, and that it's accessible in other areas of the business as well.
Okay, cool. We have a LinkedIn user that wanted to ask a question. How do you see digital scale intersecting with customer experience programs, VOC, journey mapping? Where do they align, overlap, and diverge? That's kind of a big question. We'll leave it up here. So anyone want to tackle that? I thought that was interesting, but I'll just add my comment and then see if anyone wants to add something. So there's tons of overlap. So the whole point of voice of the customer journey, right, VOC, is the main point of kind of customer success, if I had to give it in one sentence, is to be able to turn one customer into 2 or to 3 or to create fans, right? So you can't think of like customer experience and then digital as like in silos, because when we have silos, then that's how we end up getting 5 emails from the same company. But if you think, how am I using my digital customer success program to help create fans within this so that we can create second order revenue, which means like Michaela works at now Adobe. She leaves Adobe to go work over at Marketo, right? And she says, oh, I can't live without Brad's tool. And then she buys it, right? That's second order revenue, which is kind of what the gold standard, what we aim. So anybody have some thoughts they want to throw in here about this question from LinkedIn user?
I love the reference to journey mapping, because that was really, we started off, I think content is king, and we haven't really talked about content today, but I genuinely believe that great content that has actionable takeaway based on the persona that you're addressing is critical. And so we started building content based on customer need. We asked the customers what they needed. We asked CSMs what they needed, and we started creating that content. And over time, as we got a solid, bucket of like best practices, thought leadership pulled together, we actually laid that on top of our customer journey. And that allowed us to say, where do we have great penetration in best practices content, and where do we have holes, right? And so I think all of these things, work very closely together and influence one another. And, again, talking about just collaborative relationships, across these ecosystem partners. If you're in a very large organization, you may have multiple different people working in these various, you may have, someone in marketing responsible for voice of the customer, right? And you need that information from them to influence your programs. Or you may yourself in digital CS be responsible for it, right? So, but either way, whether it's under your purview or in a sister organization, that collaboration, that input, that data is needed to influence your strategy.
I would agree with Melanie, and for me, the whole journey mapping, that's the beginning of the whole digital customer success, because without having the journey map and without knowing what customer is going through, you're just shooting blanks.
I could touch on the VOC piece, because that was actually a huge challenge for us at first. We had a whole separate team that was running surveys and trying to analyze those in a whole different tool. And we had Gainsight has a functionality to do that, but we weren't really supposed to, right? Because that was kind of their world.
Right.
So what we had to do and kind of collaborated to figure out how to do was take that data and pull it in and tie it to the right customer and ensure we were using that. And actually, we ended up building a health score that had that as a factor, right? As build a NPS and engagement score that is included in your overall customer health score that then you can tailor programs to. So I think in an ideal world, maybe CS or digital CS would have an arm over that and maybe have a little bit more of the ability to send these surveys and customize those and build that. But even if not, you can have kind of this relationship where you're pulling that data in and you're working with that team to build something together that is going to be useful.
Yeah, I've worked in Series A startups, small companies. So we used to make jokes on who is HR today, because we'd be sitting next to people and be like, hey, are you HR? Yeah, cool. I need to put in a complaint. But I think at small companies, there's not the marketing kind of doing what they do, but the customer journey or this journey mapping is what they call is squarely in CS. And I guess the take home point is that whoever's touching the customer in whatever way, whether it's a marketing email or it's a digital customer success email or in-app messaging, you just want to map all of that out. Because if you're and that's why we can't have silos, because if you're the end user and you're experiencing this, the reason why an unsubscribe button in Logic has been built into every default software is because people are getting spammed, right? And because it's hurting their brand. They're like, oh, we like spamming people. But it turns out it's not the best user experience. So that's why, circling all the way back what I said, right message, right channel, right person. I think that's the art of it, right? Which is trying to get enough feedback where that can be the kind of optimize. So I know we're right here at time. So it's been a great conversation. We could talk about this for another hour. Unfortunately, our time is drawing near. So why don't we just go around real quick and tell people where they can connect with you, and then feel free to pitch anything that you're going to be at, or Justin, wherever you're speaking, or whatever it is that you're working on, and tell people where they can interact with you. So go Justin, Michaela, Melanie.
Sure. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please connect with me, send a message. I'm happy to help connect with you or talk about any of the stuff. I've got a Substack, so please check out my Substack. I write about digital CS, CS ops, all these changes, all these things that we've kind of covered. So I love to share those kind of thoughts and ideas. I'll be speaking at the Matic Digital CS Summit on April 10th. So anyone interested in this topic, there are a ton of great speakers and knowledgeable folks in the subject. So please join. I've got a session on digital CS and CS ops and the intersection there. So please feel free to join mine, but any of the other ones are going to be great too. I've also just had a podcast come out, the Digital CX podcast. So if you're interested in digital CX, Alex is a great host. He's had a lot of great people on that. My episode was just the most recent one, but all of them are great. So please check that out. And yes, please connect with me if you have anything you want to talk about.
I still have Alex's sticker when I met him in person on the back of my computer.
Nice.
So I was just, next time I see him, I was going to show him. Anyways, go ahead, Michaela.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I am always happy to chat about anything customer success. I'm able to talk about it for hours. I'm also a mentor at Mentor CX, and I still have a couple of pro bono mentoring sessions left. So if you're looking for some guidance, I'm happy to help. Just shoot me a message, and I can send you a code to get your free mentoring session with me. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I am also a host of Retain and Gain podcast. So if you want to appear on podcasts and have anything to say about customer success, revenue, and post-sales operations, just let me know.
Awesome. Go ahead, Melanie.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to connect. Absolutely available for one-to-one conversations on customer success. You can connect with me over LinkedIn. Happy to connect there. My next conversation is going to be related to conversational AI. And so I'll be covering that on April 1st through CX Network. So
cool.
If you're interested, stop by.
There you go. Well, Justin, Michaela, Melanie, thank you for coming on the Customer Success Show. It was a good episode. Lots of good stuff packed in here. You saw the comments coming in. People really appreciate when you take the time out of your busy day to share what you know. And we will go ahead and sign off. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you next week on episode 29. Take care, guys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.